Muslims believe the Quran restores the true message of Jesus and corrects the corrupted Christian Bible. But when we compare certain Quranic stories with earlier Christian apocrypha, meaning early Christian writings later excluded from the New Testament canon, the overlap becomes difficult to ignore. So here's the tension. Is the Quran revealing forgotten divine history, or is it reshaping stories already circulating among Christians of late antiquity? Let us examine the evidence carefully. First, a clarification. Christian apocrypha are early texts about Jesus, Mary, and the apostles that were not accepted into the New Testament canon. Many were popular in certain communities, especially in Syriac-speaking regions close to Arabia, but church authorities did not recognize them as divinely inspired. Texts such as the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, the Proto-Evangelium of James, and the Gospel of Pseudo-Matthew belong to this category. These writings predate Islam by centuries. Now the first case, Jesus speaking from the cradle. In Surah Maryam, Mary, the infant Jesus speaks to defend his mother. Classical scholars such as Al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, and Al-Qurtubi treat this as a decisive mu'jiza, miracle. It establishes prophethood from infancy and protects Mary's honor. This episode does not appear in the canonical Gospels. Yet similar motifs appear in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas and related Syriac traditions. The traditional explanation is theological. The Quran confirms fragments of authentic revelation that earlier communities distorted. Ibn Hazm speaks of tahrif, distortion, meaning alteration of earlier scripture. The historical observation is chronological. These infancy traditions were already circulating before Islam. Now the second case, and here the symbolism becomes more powerful. In Surah Al Imran, the family of Imran, Jesus forms birds from clay and breathes into them, bi-idhin Allah, by God's permission. Classical tafsir stresses this phrase to protect tawheed, absolute monotheism. Jesus does not create independently, but consider the imagery. In the Qur'an, God creates Adam from clay. Here, Jesus shapes clay and breathes life into it. The symbolism closely mirrors divine creative action. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas contains nearly the same miracle. The young Jesus forms clay sparrows and animates them. This is not a vague resemblance. It is structural similarity, followed by theological qualification. And another observation. Jesus is mentioned by name about 25 times in the Qur'an. Muhammad is mentioned by name only 4 times. The Qur'an attributes extraordinary miracles to Jesus, yet it does not describe Muhammad performing creative acts of that nature. That asymmetry is significant. From theology, one might say this honors Jesus while safeguarding strict monotheism. From historical analysis, it looks like an existing Christian miracle tradition incorporated and reframed with the permission of Allah to remove divine ambiguity. Now the third example, and this one is often overlooked. In Surah Al Ma'idah, the table spread, the disciples ask Jesus to pray that God sends down a table spread with food from heaven as a sign to reassure their hearts. God agrees but warns of severe punishment for disbelief after such a sign. This episode does not appear in the canonical Gospels. However, the imagery of a heavenly table, divine nourishment, and a sign connected to disciples resonates strongly with Eucharistic and liturgical traditions circulating in Eastern Christianity. Syriac Christian communities developed miracle narratives involving sacred meals and divine provision. The Qur'an preserves the miracle motif but strips away sacrificial and incarnational theology. There is no Last Supper framework, no atonement theology, no divine sonship. The miracle remains. The Christology is removed. Again, we see not random similarity, but selective retention and theological correction. Now the fourth case, the sleepers in Surah Al-Kahf, the cave. The Quran narrates young believers who flee persecution and sleep for centuries. It explicitly mentions that some say they were 3, others 5, others 7, and that only God truly knows their number. This reference to competing numbers implies the story was already circulating. In the Christian legend of the 7 sleepers of Ephesus, widely attested in Syriac Christianity before Islam, variations about their number and details existed in different tellings. The Quran does not introduce the story as new information. It enters an existing debate and reframes it. Now step back and look at the cumulative pattern. The cradle speech. the clay birds, the heavenly table, the sleepers, the palm tree in Surah Maryam where Mary shakes the trunk and dates fall, all appear in earlier Christian non-canonical traditions. At the same time, the Qur'an consistently reshapes them. It removes elements incompatible with Tawheed. It avoids divine sonship language. It recenters authority in God. In previous discussions, we noted that the Qur'an's portrayal of Christianity often aligns more closely with marginal or non-Orthodox Christian environments, such as Ebionite tendencies, certain Gnostic strands, or monophysite contexts, rather than fully developed Byzantine orthodoxy. That broader observation helps explain why apocryphal material appears so prominently. Now consider historical context. According to early Sirah literature such as Ibn Ishaq, Muhammad worked as a trader for Khadijah and traveled north towards Syrian markets. These routes connected Mecca with regions where Syriac Christianity was active. Jewish communities were also present in Arabia. The peninsula was not isolated from surrounding religious currents. This does not prove borrowing, but it makes exposure historically plausible, and the pattern extends beyond strictly Christian material. Take one striking example from the broader biblical world: the story of the Queen of Sheba in Surah Al Ma'idah, the ant. In the Hebrew Bible, the Queen of Sheba visits Solomon. The Qur'an includes additional details: the hoopoe bird reporting her kingdom, the letter from Solomon, the transportation of her throne before her arrival, the glass floor that appears like water. These embellishments do not appear in the canonical Hebrew Bible. Yet similar expansions appear in post-biblical Jewish traditions and in the writings of Flavius Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews. Later rabbinic literature develops comparable legendary details. The Quranic version aligns more closely with these expanded retellings than with the original biblical account. So we return to our two interpretive models. 1. The theological model. The Qur'an restores authentic fragments of revelation preserved imperfectly in apocryphal and post-biblical traditions. 2. The historical model. The Qur'an emerges within a late antique religious ecosystem and reshapes narratives already circulating among Jews and Christians. The apocryphal texts and expanded traditions predate Islam. The stories existed before the Qur'an. The overlap is structural. So when you read Surah Al-Imran and see Jesus shaping clay and breathing life into it, echoing the creation of Adam, or Surah Al Ma'idah and the heavenly table, or Surah Al-Kahf and the debated number of sleepers, ask yourself which explanation carries greater historical weight. If you would like, we can explore in a future video similar parallels between the Qur'an and Jewish Midrash, or even examine possible connections with Zoroastrian eschatological ideas. If you found this video useful, hit a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. Ergo dubito. Think critically.